Hi guys, welcome to my channel. As you'll see from the title of this video, today is my Not a Booktube video for the month, and as you'll also see from the title of this video, it's about something that's really personal. I am quite nervous making this video, but I've touched on it a few times in other ones and it feels like I need to actually talk about it properly. So today I'm going to be talking about my experience of depression and generalized anxiety disorder. So a couple of disclaimers. I haven't scripted this video at all. I've been thinking about it for weeks, but I just wanted it to be kind of a chat rather than anything scripted, so I haven't scripted it. I'm also not an expert. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. All I can talk about is my own experience, things that have helped me, so I am no expert and I'm not claiming to be. And also, obviously, if you struggle with this kind of thing and you think that this video might trigger you, then maybe this isn't the one to watch for you. So I thought I would just put a couple of disclaimers so we all know what's going on. Although, first of all, let me show you my jumper. This is my Meow or Never sweater, which my stepson Charlie bought me, I think, for my last birthday, and I love it. So I thought I'd wear it today. So, today I'm going to talk about my history, what happened to me, and then at some point I will do a second video about how I take care of myself, and then I might do a Q&A. I did put on my Bookstagram account asking for questions, so if you've got any questions from this video then please leave them below, and then if I get enough I will do a Q&A about mental health. Like I said, I'm no expert and these are just my experiences. So, stop waffling, get on with it. So, when I was 21, I had a breakdown, and actually at the time that it happened, I didn't realise that that is what had happened. I was only diagnosed as having a breakdown about a year later, but I obviously had a really hard time. At the time I was at uni about to start my master's degree, and I had to go back and stay with my mum for a few weeks, and she took care of me, and neither of us really knew what had happened, just that I'd reached a point where I really wasn't well. And I've thought long and hard about how to tell this story, and I'm not going to get into the details of why I had that breakdown, because it's not just my story to tell, it's kind of interlinked with lots of other people's stories, and it doesn't feel right to me to kind of tell those stories without those people. But I had been unwell for a long time before that point. This is not something that happened overnight or over 6 months. It had been coming for a very, very long time. So I had a breakdown. I managed to get myself back on my feet enough to function. And I carried on with my master's degree, and actually I really wish I hadn't. I wish I'd deferred it, because I think I would have got a lot more out of it and enjoyed it a lot more if I'd waited, but hindsight is a beautiful thing. So yeah, I managed to get myself back on my feet enough to kind of function on a basic level. And then about a year later I was finishing my master's degree, and I'd moved to a little cottage of my own out in a village near Bath, and I went to the doctors about something completely something else. I think I was having an issue with the joint in my knee, something like that. Anyway, not related to mental health at all. And the doctor said, "How are you?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." And she looked at me and she said, "No, how are you?" And I'd had plenty of people in that, the period before that, asking me how I was, and I'd already just said, "Yeah, I'm fine," and just carried on. But for some reason, when she asked me that day, I just burst into tears. I sobbed on that poor woman, and she was brilliant. And it sounds really over dramatic, but it's true. I think she probably saved my life that day, because she just listened, and all this stuff came out that I didn't even know I was holding in, and she didn't try and rush me. She just let me talk and cry, and then we made an appointment for the following day, and I went back the next day, and then we talked a bit more about how I was feeling and what had happened, and she gave me the options. So she was amazing. So I was very lucky that she happened to be there that day, and that I happened to see her. So after being assessed by the mental health team, again, this was 10 years ago, so it moved fairly quickly, and I suspect that unfortunately that would not be the case now, but that's a topic for another day. And I also know that I was very lucky with the postcode that I was living in. The postcode lottery, I was definitely a winner on that, because I was very quickly seen. Within a few weeks, I think about 2 weeks, I'd been seen and assessed, and I was given originally the diagnosis of depression and obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD, because I was definitely depressed. You know, I was struggling to get out of bed in the morning. I just felt so down. Physically, I felt like physically heavy, like I couldn't move around. I was in a really, really bad way. And I was also displaying behaviours that would fall into the OCD camp. So I was having very intrusive thoughts of, if I don't flick the light switch on and off 3 times before I leave a room, then my mum's going to have a car crash and die. Things like that. And I would have to turn the knob on the oven a few times before I turned it off correctly. So things like that are kind of classic OCD behaviours. But for some reason the diagnosis didn't quite sit right with me. But anyway, that's what I was diagnosed with originally. I was offered medication, which I did go on for a short period. For about 2 or 3 months I was on some medication. I took the option not to continue with that, which was the right decision for me, but that's not to say that people shouldn't take medication for mental illnesses. You definitely should. If that is the right option for you, then do it. It wasn't the right one for me because actually I found that therapy was incredibly helpful. So I had three therapists in the end. That's quite hard to say. The initial one diagnosed me with OCD, but she was based right over in Bristol, and at the time where I was living it was quite difficult for me to get to her, and one of the problems that I was having regular panic attacks and anxiety attacks, which were triggered by driving and having to drive on the motorway, so that was not ideal. So she then referred me to a second one who I only met with twice. I just didn't click with him at all. So I would say that if you have a therapist and you don't feel comfortable talking to them, ask for someone else. And I know that's hard when you're struggling with an anxiety disorder like I am, or was and am. But I managed to communicate that, and I found a third therapist who was based like 20 minutes from me, who was amazing. And I saw her, at first I saw her 3 times a week, which felt like a lot. And then I saw her once a week, and then once a fortnight, and then once every 3 weeks, and it gradually like tapered off. But I saw her in total for about 2.5 years, and it was her who said, actually, I don't think you have OCD, I think it's generalized anxiety disorder. And when she explained it to me, it's such a cliche, but like it was literally like a light bulb going off in my head, and I thought, yes, that is what I'm feeling. You've just described everything that I'm feeling. Because the OCD diagnosis is different to anxiety. They're quite often, I think, linked together. Again, not that I'm an expert, but some of the characteristics of OCD I just didn't feel like fitted me. But generalized anxiety disorder, I was like, yes, that's it. So for anyone that doesn't know, generalized anxiety disorder is a collection, it's like an umbrella term for a collection of anxiety disorders that include social anxiety, which I was definitely struggling with. But the way that my therapist explained it at the time, and the explanation I always use when people ask me, is that basically people have like different pain thresholds. Some are higher than others, so like someone could stub their toe and feel like their whole leg's been broken, and another person could injure themselves in the same way and barely notice it. And it's the same with GAD. So someone with GAD has a lower anxiety threshold than other people. So kind of hearing that and figuring that out made me feel so much better, and it like explained so much of what I'd been feeling for years. Because things that to other people were no big deal, like walking into a room full of people and chatting to someone, it would physically make me feel sick. Like I would not be able to do that, and it was just too much. So I worked with Sian, my therapist, for about 2.5 years, and we did a combination of CBT, which is cognitive behavioural therapy, and exposure therapy. So CBT is a way to basically it's a talking therapy, so you talk through everything. So we literally started from my childhood and then right up to the age that I was, everything that had happened to me, good, bad, stressful, wonderful, everything, literally everything that had ever happened to me, we talked about. And then we talked about how that made me feel and why I might be reacting certain ways. So that was really helpful. That was I can't lie, it was hard. It was really, really hard, painful. I'd come out, you know, having like sobbed for an hour and a half, but I always came out feeling better than when I went in because part of the weight was being lifted from me. So we did that, and then in conjunction with that, sort of alongside it, we did exposure therapy, and that was also, I can't lie, it was hard. So I had lots of things that were triggering me. Looking back at it now, I cannot believe that I managed to hide it from so many people in my life. Like, and I was working as well, I was working full time, but I was having like 2 or 3 panic attacks a day, and then anxiety attacks. I was just cycling through them, so I would come out of one and then pretty much go straight back into another one. For those that don't know, panic attack is a physical reaction. So you know, you'd feel your heart pounding, you might be sick, your palms will be sweating, it's that like fight or flight instinct in your brain is off. So it's awful. Like, even thinking about, I've not had one for ages, and the thought of it is making me, like, my heart race. And that tends to be a physical thing that other people will notice you having, because you'll be crying on, hyperventilating, possibly being sick, that kind of thing. Whereas in my experience, an anxiety attack is much more internal. It's in my head. So I've had anxiety attacks before that have happened as I'm having a conversation with somebody, and that person hasn't even noticed. They might have noticed that I might be a bit quieter than normal, but they haven't noticed that I'm completely paralysed. For me, when it happens, literally everything stops around me. It's like being underwater. I can see other people talking to me or moving around, and I can't hear them because all I can feel is this sheer anxiety in my brain. And again, I've not had one for a long time, but even thinking about it, it's making me, ooh. If you have them, then I'm sorry. I know how much it sucks. So I was having this all the time, and I had a long list of things that triggered me, some of which were completely contradictory. I was triggered by enclosed spaces, by huge crowds of people. So like the supermarket, I just struggled because there were people and noise and lights and music, and there was just too much going on. What else set me off? Public transport, like I said already, driving. So I couldn't stay in. Oh yeah, being on my own, that was another one. Couldn't stay in, couldn't go out, couldn't have people in my space. I became very, the reason that I was diagnosed with ACD originally was because it was a control behaviour. So I felt better if literally everything in my space was in a certain way. So yeah, I was in a mess. It was not good. But CBT massively helped me, because what it does is reprogram your reactions. So it helps you figure out what's causing the problem, you figure out why you're reacting that way, and then you alter the way that you react to the problem. So, for example, the supermarket. I'd had several panic attacks and anxiety attacks, either at the supermarket or on the way to the supermarket, or even thinking about going to the supermarket. So what Sian did with me is we very, very gradually built up my resistance to that feeling, because it's that thing of, okay, so what is it you're worried about in the supermarket? I'm worried about having a panic attack. Okay, what happens if you have a panic attack? Well, everyone will see me crying and hyperventilating. Okay, worst case scenario, what does that mean? Oh, they think badly of me. Well, so what? In all likelihood, they're actually more likely to help you rather than, you know, throw sticks at you. So it was trying to retrain my brain to do that. So I had to do like little exercises. So I had to write a shopping list, and then that was enough for that day. And then the following day, I would walk to my car and get in my car and sit there for a few minutes and then come back. And then the day after that, I would maybe drive to the supermarket and just sit outside and then leave. And then the day after that, I would go to the supermarket and stand in the doorway, and then I'd have to go to the supermarket and do a single lap of the shop and come out without buying anything, and then go to the shop, do a lap, buy something, come out, and gradually got to a point where actually going to the supermarket was no longer a problem. And we worked through all of the big trigger points for me over the course of about 2 years. After that, after I kind of graduated from therapy, I was by that point like much better equipped to deal with my brain. Like I said, I chose not to go on long-term anxiety medication, and there are loads out there that are brilliant and help loads of people, but for me, I felt like my therapy was enough to help me get a grip on it. So that's like 8 years ago. I would say from the time that I had my breakdown to being fully back on my feet and feeling like myself, it probably took 5 years, but I got there in the end. Since that time, my anxiety's been much better. My depression, I would say, is definitely in remission. The topic of whether or not you can be cured of anxiety and depression is quite a controversial one. I've even had some quite difficult conversations with people in my own life who know what I've been through. And it's a very, very personal thing. I think if you feel like you have been cured, then that's amazing, and I'm so pleased for you. For me personally, I don't think that it's something that I will be cured of. I think it's just actually part of my brain and the way my brain is wired, and it's a case of keeping myself well and looking after myself and maintaining it that way. I'm not a depressed person currently, and I feel very grateful to be able to say that, because I know there are so many people that aren't. My depression is not currently active, but I know that it's there. My anxiety these days is loads better. I had a bit of a relapse before Christmas because I just wasn't looking after myself, and actually I had a panic attack on my way to work one day, and that was horrendous at the time, but actually it turned out to be a good thing because it meant that I had a real good look at what I was doing, and I've changed loads of stuff, and 2 months later I feel so much better. But my anxiety is always there, and it's something I have to be aware of. It's like any other illness. If I had diabetes, then my diet would be, different from somebody who doesn't have diabetes. If I had a heart condition, I would be taking tablets every day and making sure that I was doing things that would look after my heart. My brain is the same. I do have a mental illness. I will always have that mental illness, but it's a case of managing it and looking after myself and talking about it. So this is the main reason I'm making this video, is to talk about it, because I think the more we talk about it, the less of an issue or a taboo it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be an issue. Some people have diabetes, some people have heart disease, some people have mental health issues. I'm one of those. I will make another video, because this is already quite long. I will make another video next time about how I take care of myself, things that work for me. Again, it can only be my experience and my thoughts. I'm not an expert, I'm not a doctor, but I just thought I'd put my 2 pence worth in. And if you've got any questions or anything else that you want to chat about below, then please feel free. Please be kind. Like I said, I am nervous about putting this out into the world. A bit different from just chatting about the books I've enjoyed. And yeah, I will see you in the next one. Thanks guys. Bye.